In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating the artwork for an LED neon sign. So we're going to be using CorelDRAW 6 for this particular example. So let's go ahead and let's import our source artwork. I'm making this sign for my daughter, and she really likes Converse shoes. So I saw this design, and I thought it would make for a good kind of jumping off point, a good starter point for our project. Uh, Now I am going to be making a few different design changes to it. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down a guideline here and then just try to take my graphic here and rotate it so it's more or less perfectly horizontal. So that's probably pretty close. See there, my text is nice and horizontal. So I guess that's okay. Now, I am going to right click on this and choose to lock so I can't accidentally move it. I think that'll be helpful. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go to the view menu and choose the wireframe option. And that just, to me, makes it a little bit easier. You can see the bitmap is a little bit see-through. And then when we put something on top of it, it'll be a lot easier for us to see it. So to begin with, I am just looking at how they originally created this design to see if there are any potential issues. And you can see here, you see how like this one comes up here and this one goes this way. So we're just kind of looking, looks like there's a little split there. I'm not sure why there would be. But what I'm looking for is potential issues. Like this is a pretty sharp corner. And then the other thing to consider is the size that we're going to make this sign. That's another consideration. That could be problematic as well. Now you can see here in the original design how this line comes across and dips down. So I don't really like that. So that spacing I will keep kind of uniform. I don't like this where the shoelace comes down and then there's like this little drip thing here. I don't like that. So there are a few changes that we'll make to the design. I don't like this where it's kind of supposed to make it so the shoe is like drooping like it probably typically would, but I think I would prefer that to just be round with the star. So there are a few things that I would like to change, and this is a Converse thing. This what I would call a crooked star. It's not really crooked. That's how Converse does their logo. Um, so anyhow, um, it's a good jumping off point for us. It's a good reference point, but there's definitely some things that I think I would want to change. So I'm just going to walk you through the process of how I would go about creating this design. So we're going to be using predominantly the 3-point curve tool mostly. Now you could use the pen tool as well. In fact, maybe I'll start you off there because I think that might be, maybe a bit more basic, um, possibly. So if we're going to use the pen tool, we'll just start here. Well, if I just click and click and click and click, that's kind of how when I'm teaching people to start out, that's usually how I do it. So I'll just go along here, and all we gotta do is hit the enter key or you can double click, either way, to create a new side layout. So we're clicking, double clicking, and that will create the path for us. Double clicking, okay? So we've created our shoelace pieces. Now let's do this curve here. Now I am going to probably curve it more than it was originally. So I'm going to come into my shoelace a little bit more than it did previously. Okay, same thing here. Come into the shoelace a little bit. So we're just creating these straight line segments roughly following the curve. So then we have, let's see here, do we want to stop there? I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and do our shoelace. Now, just for fun, just to show you another option here, I said we could use our pen tool or we could use our 3-point curve tool. So in this case, I am going to show you the 3-point curve tool because I think it's a simple enough example. So the 3-point curve tool, what it expects is it expects us to define a start point, which will define it up top here, and then it's going to ask us to define a secondary point. So what we're doing is we're clicking up top and dragging to our secondary point, and then the third point we define the curve. Now don't stress too much if it's not exact or whatever, because we can then switch over to our node tool, or shape tool I guess it's called, and we get these control handles where we could fine tune the exact shape we wanted. Okay, so don't stress too much about that. So let's go back to our 3-point curve tool. When we hover over the end, you see that little arrow that pops up? What that is telling us, it's going to connect to what we already had started. So we're going to come down, we're going to come down. So we 1, 2, 3. So that curve tool is pretty cool. And of course, when we use that, now we have a perfectly curved shape, where here we have a segmented shape. Okay. So that's kind of what the difference is there. So what do we do with our segmented shapes? How do we fix that? Well, we can go to our shape tool and we can individually, see these are straight lines right now. You see that there? So what we need to do is we need to convert those into a curve. So we can right click here and see it says to curve, and now those are curves. So now we can hover over our path and see how we can control that curve. Now this one apparently is still a, so we right click, no? Not sure why. That's still a straight line segment. So we'll do to curve, and there we go. Now we can bend it. Now we have this, so a simple curve like this, we really just need 2 points to define it. Okay. Now this here is more or less, we'll consider that a straight line. Let me just put that right in the center. I did add a node here just for fun, but I don't think we really need it, because that particular path is more or less straight. So now we'll go back over here, and again, we don't really need those 2 points in the middle. So you can see here it's already to a curve because it wants to change it to a line, which we don't need to do. So we can go ahead and use these control handles to kind of perfect it there. This is more or less a straight segment. This is more or less a straight segment. So what do we do here? Well, here what we could do is we'll go ahead and accidentally added a node there. We'll go ahead and change these nodes to a curve. So we'll just right click on those and choose to curve. And you can see when we right click on the rest of them, it says to line, to line, to line, to line. So that what that means is that all of those were in fact changed to a curve, because now it's asking us to turn it back to a line. So that I can come in here and I could just make all these curves. So you could just pull it out and make it into a curve. Okay. Now, if you want to perfect that a little bit, you can. We don't really need all these nodes, so we could delete some of them, and that helps us smooth it out. But you can see how with relatively little effort, we now have a nice smooth curve. Another thing we could do, and I just want to show you this, and this is probably in reality how I would do it, is I would just come in here and I would create a circle like so. Okay, so now, and just resize that circle however big we want it. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So now I have my circle here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and convert this. Right now it's a circle, and so you see if I right click I can convert it to curves, and then what I can do here is right where I want to split it, I just double click on it and add a node, and then I right click and choose break apart. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over on this side and this side and add a node, and where I chose to break apart I can just double click on that one, and you see what it does. It deletes that back to that node that I just created. So you see there, I essentially created the same thing, but this is nice and smooth and perfect. So what I will do now is I will go ahead and copy that to these other locations, and then the advantage there is these will all be the same size. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll come in here, and what I'm looking for is this point to basically be right there at the end of the shoelace, and then I have to just rotate my gap so it's on the center of the shoelace. See that there? So come back over here, we will position that right on the end, and then we can rotate the gap so it's roughly center. Okay, and yeah, if depending on exactly what you want to do, you could move it down a little bit, but I think I'm just going to have them all end right there and see what that looks like. Again, we're just kind of using the artwork as a starting point, so it's not going to look exactly like the original design anyhow. It's going to be a bit more perfected. Okay, and then lastly up here, select, and then we're going to turn it all the way down here. That's probably how I would really do it. And then we can come up here, copy it up here, and then we still have one to go here. Again, we'll move this to the end. We'll rotate this around and around some more, some more. Something like that. Okay, now up here, I think I'm going to have the spacing, we'll put it up here, up at the top like it was. That'll be fine. So that's how I would handle that. Okay, And then there is that little air hole uh, at the shoe. So we'll go ahead and make it smaller. And I think we will have the neon connect at the bottom like it is here. Okay. We'll have to see what size that actually is. That might be a pretty tight curve for the neon to make, but we'll see. We'll see if we can make it work. And then over here, we are going to rotate our gap here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add a node there, and I'm going to add a node up here, and then I'm going to delete all of these other nodes that are in between those two. So now you can see we have that gap there. Okay, that's representing the other air hole. And now that I see that, because it is representing the other air hole, it shouldn't be that big. Well, I tell you what, let me change my mind. Let me go ahead and make it that big, and let's delete this, and let's resize this one. So that is basically the same size. Okay, so we'll make the air hole the same size. I might cheat it just a little bit. Here's what I'll do. I'll compromise. We're going to resize both of these at the same time. So I do want these to be a little bit smaller than the eyelets, because they would be a little bit smaller in real life. But now these two are the same size. That was the main thing I was wanting. So we'll go with that. Okay. All right. So now we've got that part of the shoe done. Let's take a look at recreating the rest here. So we could use a combination of the pen tool, a combination of the 3-point curve tool. I think the 3-point curve tool is going to be simpler to use. So we'll just go ahead and start there. And basically the way this works, the way I think about it working anyhow, is I click and drag, right? You got to click and drag and set the curve, okay? And then we're going to connect to this, see that little drop down arrow? And we're going to pull to the next curve spot, if that makes sense. So visually, look at this. To me, this curve comes down a little bit, then it goes up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is pull to the next curve spot. See how we've got a curve now. And then I'm going to reconnect, pull to the next curve spot, and see how that curves up a little bit to me. Okay, and then we'll curve to the next curve spot. And this is just something that you'll kind of get the hang of. We're going to go way up here and see if we can make that curve. Okay, now we can kind of do it, but I'm just going to hit the escape key, and I'm going to do it a little bit less crazy. So if you try something and you don't really like it, it's really not that big a deal, because we can go back and edit it at the end. But you can just hit the escape key and try a different spot. So see there, this curves this way. Then we'll do one right. Sometimes I'll do it right there at the top, and then we'll come around. I've been using CorelDRAW for a long time, so for me it's kind of more or less second nature drawing this way, but you get in here and experiment a little bit and you'll figure it out, I think, pretty quickly. So sometimes I like doing it right at the crown, and then we'll come back down. Now, right now I'm not really that concerned with all my connection points. We'll figure that out once we get it all drawn out, how we're actually going to go about laying our neon rope down. See here, we're gonna have to stop because we're coming in. I do know we would probably stop here and then we'd have another piece of rope going there. So I will just go ahead and stop it right there. Okay. So now, will we actually have a piece of rope that goes around, 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 all the way down to here? We might. I don't really know. We'll figure it out as we go. So then we'll go ahead and do this side of the shoe. Didn't really get that curved very well, but that's okay. We're going to come back in and edit this all and make it all perfect here in a minute. So that 3-point curve tool to me is just one of the really easy tools to work with. Now there are other tools. Um, so uh, there are other tools and other ways to use our other tools. This B-spline tool, sometimes it can be a pretty cool tool. I don't use it very much, but it allows us to just kind of click on points and it will kind of automatically create the curves for us. So you can see here we have when you do use that B-spline tool, it does create a really nice curve for us. But you see how how you have all these points. So it's kind of interesting how it works, but to me that's a more advanced feature. But it does work incredibly well, as you can see. It really does a good job. So you might try to experiment with that. You might like that. You might like that B-spline tool. It's just another tool for your arsenal. I tend to use that 3-point curve tool the most. Okay. All right. So so the next step here then is to do this section, and what I think I'm going to do here is I am going to have this piece of neon rope come down like this, and it's going to just die into this one. So it's going to be something like that. Now you see here where this is not quite as sharp, right? It's okay, because what we could do is we could pull our control handle this way. We can pull our control handle that way, and we can get it sharp. See how it's as sharp as it was originally. So it's pretty easy to kind of manipulate that. So we'll use our 3-point curve tool and connect right here. There we go. And then we will go ahead and make these horizontal lines here. So we'll go like so. We'll go like so. And we're not going to pay any attention to our shoestring here. And what we're looking for is I want this spacing to be more or less the same. And you can see it is more or less the same. Then we'll come up here and we'll do this this portion of the shoe. We're going to stop it right there. Now, I'm not super satisfied with the way this looks, so we can edit it. So what I'm going to do is just, I added a note on either side, and then that just kind of smooths it out a little bit there. Okay. And then what we can do, because the space up here is basically the same, what we can do is we could just copy this one down, and then we would know that this is more or less the same going across like that. Now, yes, we would have to extend this one out a little bit, but not that significantly much. Okay, and I might just move this down just a little bit more. Okay, so again, we may go back in and modify this a little bit. That's why I'm not trimming around my shoelace right now, because we may go back in and modify that a little bit at the end. So now we basically have all of our elements in place except for the logo. So for the logo, we will make a round circle. Perhaps we can get it just a little bit bigger. And then we'll go ahead and put a star in there. We will have to modify this. And we'll center these two pieces. And now let's take a look at just the shoe configuration. So there is our version of that shoe. And I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with that. Now, we don't have it sized to the finished size of our sign, and we don't have the actual thickness of our LED neon applied to it. And when we add our thickness to our LED neon, we may have to go in and modify our design a little bit. Okay, so that's just something we're going to have to experiment with a little bit. So we'll see. So now the next thing to do is to create the Converse lettering. So what I'm going to do is I am going to put a guideline at the top because I kind of want a nice uniform lettering. And then we already have a guideline at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and create a circle. And that's going to become our O. And then we're going to hit Control Q. That converts our circle to a shape. And then we can add some nose to our shape. One in the middle, right click, break apart. And then we can delete back to the shape that we created. So now we have our letter C that way. Now I think what I'm going to do, even though it's not this way on the original, is I'm going to have my end of my C to line up. I think that looks better that way. Okay, I'm not worried about the spacing between the lettering. We'll fix that at the end. Okay, so so now we can go to just our regular line tool here, and we're going to hover over, come down, back up, come down, and then what I'm going to do, just so it's the same. Actually, I'm not really. Let's undo that. I'm not really happy with my angle. I didn't do a very good job on my angle to match what was already there. So let me go ahead and modify that a little bit. So just to make sure that this is the same on both sides, I'm just going to go ahead and mirror it over. And then we have to combine those two halves. And then down here where they connect, they're not connected yet. So we'll select those two nodes, and then we'll choose this option to join two nodes. Now that's fully connected. Okay. So then for our letter E here, we'll go back to our 2-point line tool. Come straight down. We'll hover over till we get our little arrow, because that means it's connected. And then we can come across. I'm going to pull over a guideline so we know how far to go up top here. So we'll have to double click on that, grab our 2-point line tool, and then we can come right over and connect it. Now this will not be connected here. If we hold our shift key down, we can constrain it to a perfectly horizontal position. Okay, so that can be useful. Now what I'm going to do here is something kind of weird, is I am going to use my E for my R. So let's pull that over. And what I mean by that is we have some elements of our R already made. So I'm going to double click here. We're going to delete this. So this is supposed to kind of line up here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to pull this one back, right? And then we'll connect that with a 3-point curve. So let's see, what do I want to do here? Trying to think, yeah, let's do it that way. Okay, yeah, we'll connect it to a 3-point curve here. That's fine. And then we obviously are going to have to shape this into position here. So not a problem. We'll pull this down, get this the way we want it. Pull this one back up. We might even add us a node so we can manipulate it a little bit better, however we want it. And I guess that's good. I think what I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to connect these. There's two pieces here. See, there's one, and then there's the second one. So we're going to combine those two together, and where they connect, where do they connect? They connect right here. We are going to join those two nodes. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those, and I'm just going to pull this back just a little bit. I don't want it quite so wide. Okay? Not too bad. Then we'll grab our 2-point line tool, and then we'll add the tail of our R like that. Then we already have our E made, so we'll go ahead and pull that over. And then the only thing that's left to do is our S. So we will pull, click, and drag, come up here and connect. And you know what, just for fun, let's delete this. Just for fun, let's use our B-spline tool. This is a good example of B-spline. So we just click and click and click and click. So our B-spline tool kind of works like our pen tool does, but it automatically creates our curves for us. So that's kind of cool. I want to pull it down. One thing I will look at, because I don't really like it, is how these line up. So you see how much that overextends on the front and back. I don't really like that. So we can just add a node, and then we can delete it here. And then down here, we can add a node and delete what's hanging over. So I like that better. And then we'll make it a little bit wider. And I want it roughly the same width as my E. So my E is 0.78 and my S is 0.78. And look at there. Like I said, just roughly the same size. I don't know why I do it that way, but that's kind of how I like it. Okay. And then for this element here, we'll just use our 2-point line tool. And kind of like we did earlier with our V, let's copy that up, and we will combine those two together. We will double click on that newly combined shape and join those two nodes. But you can see it's too big now. So we will make it so it's the same height as the rest of it. Okay, so that takes care of that. And then, one thing that I did notice, even on the real Converse logo, this line and this line are two different angles. And I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but in this case, we're not going to make it two different angles. So that's just a little tidbit for you. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a little line segment like so. And then we will just kind of rotate this around. So we'll change our rotation point and we'll rotate it. And I'm going to right click to create a copy. Rotate, right click to create a copy. Rotate, right click to create a copy. And then finally rotate, create a copy. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all those pieces, group them together, and then center it on our symbol here. And that becomes our next part of our design there. Now, if I'm not happy with my lettering, which I more or less am happy, we do know that the E is comprised of two paths, so we will group those together. I think I am happy with my S, but I am going to try it a different way. No, I don't like it any better that way. So I think I am happy with my S. I say I'm happy with it, but I wish it came down and possibly up a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, I like that better. So, and it seems like it's just a touch rotated. So let me do -1 degree. Let's do -3 degrees. I'm going to keep going here. -10 degrees? That's too much. Let's go -5. Maybe -7. Okay, I like that a little bit better now. And then we're just going to stretch it up to the top, stretch it up to the bottom, and that just looks just a tiny bit better. Okay, so then, like I said, if we weren't happy with the spacing, we're just going to select everything and hit Shift P. And okay, so the reason we got a weird result is because of our R is comprised of two paths. So we're taking all the paths and then spacing them apart. Shift P. And now you can see not much change, but there was a slight change. And now we know all those letters are perfectly spaced apart. Absolutely 100% sure of that. Okay, let's go ahead and hit save this. Let's go ahead and save this, because now our design's done. Well, it's done for the most part. Converse shoe. LED sign. Alright, so now it's more or less done. So now the next thing to do is to choose what size this shoe is going to be. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it and make a duplicate. And I am going to have this, the finished size, I want this to be kind of a big sign. So we're going to make it 24 inches wide overall. We're going to try to make it 24 inches wide overall. But we need to find out how much LED sign material we're going to use to create this design. And I have created a really nifty tool for us here in CorelDRAW to simplify our lives greatly. So let me go ahead and load up my Neon Flex helper. And then we can go ahead and select our design. And we're going to choose Process Design. And it will tell us how many foot of LED material we're going to need. And as you can see, it calculated that we were going to need 19.5 feet. But here's where the challenge is. When you buy LED neon, it only comes in, it's most typically sold in 5-meter lengths, which is 16.4 feet. So ideally, we would want to fit this sign in one roll, rather than have to buy 2 rolls. Because you see here, we'd only use 3 foot of the next roll. So what if we just selected the shoe itself and processed the design? And so the shoe itself is going to take 15 feet. So that's not too bad. So that would be one potential solution, is just do the shoe. Now, in my experience, is that enough waste? I think it is. So basically, we have a 16.4 foot roll, but we're going to use 15 feet. So that only gives us a foot of waste. That's cut it kind of tight, but we could probably get it done. There wouldn't be any room for any mistakes. That's where the challenge is. So maybe, what if we change the size of this to, say, I don't know, would 18 be enough? So we're going to go ahead and select our design. And yes, at 18 inches, it's going to take 15 feet. Okay, so that's not terrible. What if we made it 16 inches? Would that, how much would that change? We need 13.5 feet. Okay, I think that's where I'm happiest. Is at 13.5 feet. Now, of total, so that gives us about 2.5 feet of waste on our LED material. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. So now what we have to do is, now that we have it sized the size we want, we have to select our design, and we've got to come in here and give it the width of our actual LED material. So in this case, we'll come out to our outline pen tool, and we know that we're going to be using 6mm rope for this example, and we're going to do rounded end caps and rounded corners, and we'll scale with the object and click OK. Okay, now you're not going to see anything change here because we're in wireframe mode, but if you go to View, Normal, then we can see exactly what we've got here. Okay, so what do we see here? Well, a few things. We need to adjust our spacing in certain areas. So for example, our lettering, I definitely would like some more space between each of our letters. So let's try that. So Shift P. So now you can see we have just that little bit of spacing. I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe move over our O just a little bit. It's a little bit too much. Somewhere in between there. I could be happy with that. I'm pretty satisfied with that spacing of our lettering. Now this, obviously, we have to change our spacing a little bit. So we will ungroup our star here, and let's move these out, because we're going to see that this is how we can't have it that tight. you know, on the actual rope. Um, so this is how it would have to be. It would have to be just like this. Okay. So now what that's showing me is that obviously this is too big. These segments are too big for what we want to do with them. Okay. So, but if we select those segments, we can just resize them. Earlier, when we chose that outline pen box, we chose 6 millimeters, but we chose scale with object. So this, or we don't want to scale with object, I'm sorry. When we scale it down, we want the millimeters to stay the same. So I told you wrong. We should not have chosen scale with object, because when we scale our objects down, like so, we want our width of our neon to stay the same. So that is going to be representative. So we click on that, and yes, we're still at 6 millimeters. So now I know that that will work in real life, because that is exactly what it would look like in real life. Now my concern is the next concern is with this element is how long that is. So if I choose process design, you tell me it's a ½ inch. And what that tells me is that's probably okay. Um, because we don't want it so small that we wouldn't have any LEDs, obviously. But in a ½ inch space, yes, we're going to have some LEDs, so that would line up okay. All right, so that part of the design's fine. Now, what else do we need to modify? Well, we know that this is too long, so we'll just add a node and delete it. So now you can see we're not quite connected, but we're really close, which is exactly what we want. Same thing here. We'll delete it. We'll just add a node, delete it. We'll add a node, delete it, to kind of get to that spacing we want. Same thing we have to do here. Come in here. Okay, so we trim that back. Okay, trim that back. So we want it to almost connect, but not quite connect. Oops. So I want to add a node. That's good. I just need to trim this back just a little bit. Zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to come back just a little bit more. So it's almost connecting, but it's not going to quite connect. I'm going to come back just a little bit more on that one. Same thing here. Okay. When we get to making the sign, we are going to be talking a little bit about a couple of different options here as how we would go about connecting these together. I do want to see how long that is. So this is basically a ½ inch. Okay, so all that looks good. So we're just trimming back those paths just a little bit here. So it's almost connecting, but not quite. Now I would like a little bit more space between those two. So I think that looks pretty good. So the way this is working right now is we have a piece of rope that comes here, and then this piece of rope is going to go all the way around, all the way down, all the way back up to there. That's how it's configured right at the moment. And I think that'll work out okay. I think we can manipulate it to that point. Okay, so that's all taken care of. Now we do need to add a path around this. So what I'm going to do is, let's see here. I'm just going to double click on that path, add a node, double click, right click, and break apart. And then we could just come in here on either side where we want to cut it, right? And then delete, and it takes it back. Okay, so we will just double click here in the middle, and then we'll just kind of do the same thing. We'll add a node on this side, add a node on that side. We will break it apart in the middle, delete, delete, and then we can just adjust our path a little bit and give us a little bit more gap if we want to. Same thing here. In the middle, add a node by double clicking, and then right click, break apart, and then delete and delete. And one more to go. Double click to add. We can right click and break apart, and then we'll add a node on this side, add a node on this side, delete, delete, and then we'll drag it back here a little bit. Okay, so now this here we could probably just move to there, give it a little bit of space, and then this here we'll just double click, we'll add a node on both sides, trim it back a little bit, something like that. And then we come up here, we got to add some space on either side here. So we'll delete that back to there. Come back just a little bit more. There we go. Something like that. Fine tune it. So that'll look good. Give it a little bit more space there. That'll look good. Come back over here. Okay. All right. So that looks good. And then we'll just kind of continue on here. I'll tell you what we could do. Let's do that. Now that we trimmed the one, let's just delete these. And we'll just kind of do what we did before, where we put this So we put these right on the end caps, and then we rotated them. So we can put this right there on the end, and then rotate the gap. Then we don't have to trim each one. They'll all be identical. To the end cap here. That one we don't have to rotate. This one we do. All right. So that is essentially our design. Now, we do actually have to modify our circle here. So it can't be, I'm going to add a note on either side. We are going to break it apart. There we go. Now we broke it apart a little bit too much, but that's okay. And then our star would be the same way. So on the star, this is going to be challenging. I don't know exactly how we're going to handle this because there's a lot of tight curves. So I really don't know if each one of these will wind up being its own segment or if I will try to manipulate the LED to create that star. I'll probably print it out on a piece of paper and be able to visually see really how big that star is. It is currently basically 2 inches by 2 inches, so that's pretty tight. So that might be a bit of a challenge. We'll just have to see how it works out. So I'm going to group my Converse bottom and I'm going to group the shoe itself, and I'm going to center those two up because they look a little off center. They were. All right. So there is our finished design. So when I choose Process Design, it tells us that we're going to use 14 foot of rope. And what I can also do is I can select my entire design and choose Output Design Details. And what this will do is this will tell me what every segment in my design, how long each segment is. So that could be useful depending on exactly how many pieces I have. So I have 38 pieces in my design. Now I won't really talk to you about all the numbering and stuff for this example, but that is a lot of pieces that make up this design. So that's a pretty complex design. So at any rate, that's really it for this video. I hope you kind of enjoyed learning a little bit about what goes into making a design. And but now that I have the design, of course, to replicate it over and over again would be a lot easier. So thanks for watching.